Imagine a gentle rain falling on dry ground, bringing life and renewal. In the same way, tears in our spiritual journey are like drops watering the seeds of empathy, compassion, and transformation. Have you ever wondered why some people are so sensitive to small things, moved to tears so easily? These tears may seem insignificant in the eyes of the world, but to God, they carry a profound and eternal purpose. C.S. Lewis once said, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. Tears are often his tools for shaping our hearts, drawing us closer to him and to the needs around us. They are not weaknesses to be hidden, but gifts that reveal the depth of our spirituality and connection to Christ's love. As Psalm 34:18 reminds us, the Lord is close to the broken-hearted. Every tear is a language God understands and cherishes. Today we will explore the spiritual significance of tears, their connection to our faith, and how they can be used to glorify God and impact lives. If this message has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more words of wisdom and encouragement on your faith journey. Join us as we uncover the divine purpose behind emotional sensitivity. Brothers and sisters in Christ, tears are often viewed as signs of weakness, but in truth, they are a precious gift from God, allowing us to express the deepest emotions of our souls. Have you ever wondered why we cry during moments that seem small or insignificant to others? Tears are like a silent language of the heart, an echo of God's presence that connects us to what truly matters. C.S. Lewis wrote, God speaks to us through our pain. This voice of God often takes the form of tears, expressions of sorrow, compassion, or even joy in response to his work in our lives. Psalm 34:18 reminds us, the Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Your tears are not wasted. They are lovingly held by a God who understands every feeling you carry. Modern culture often devalues tears, associating them with fragility, but from a divine perspective, they are expressions of a tender heart, shaped to reflect the love and compassion of the Creator. Just as Jesus wept when he saw Mary and Martha grieving the loss of Lazarus, John 11:35, we too are called to feel deeply, to connect with others, and to recognize the power of empathy. Tears are a way of pouring out our soul before God. They are not just emotional reactions, but a form of silent prayer. Imagine each tear as a seed watered by God's love, planted in fertile soil to produce the fruits of faith, empathy, and transformation. It is in brokenness that we experience God's tender care most vividly. Maybe you felt ashamed of your sensitivity, or for crying in situations others might dismiss. But what if those tears are a reflection of God's heart within you? The compassion he has planted in your spirit is not something to hide, but a gift to be celebrated. Sensitivity is not weakness. It is evidence that the Holy Spirit is working in you, drawing you closer to the character of Christ. As we reflect on the role of tears, we learn that they connect us not only to God, but also to one another. When we cry, we express our shared humanity, our need for hope, and our desire for meaning. Romans 12:15 calls us to weep with those who weep, because there is power in the empathy and emotional connection that tears provide. By valuing this gift, we begin to understand how emotions play a profound role in our spiritual journey, pointing us to something greater, a path of connection with God, trust in him, and a heart aligned with his divine love. Emotions are a reflection of the depth of our soul and our connection with God. Have you ever noticed how moments of joy, sorrow, or compassion can become bridges to deeper experiences with him? Emotions, though sometimes difficult to navigate, are a divine tool that helps us understand not only who we are, but also who God is and how He works in us. C.S. Lewis reminds us, God is more concerned with who we become than with how we feel in the moment. This shows us that emotions are not an end in themselves, but a means to something greater. When Jesus wept at Lazarus' tomb, John 11:35, He didn't just show His humanity. He revealed that feeling deeply is not contrary to spirituality. It is part of it. To feel is to reflect the compassionate heart of God. The Bible encourages us not to suppress our emotions, but to bring them before God. Psalm 62:8 says, "Pour out your hearts to Him, for God is our refuge." This reminds us that our emotions, whether joy or sorrow, can be transformed into prayer. When we bring our feelings into God's presence, we allow Him to teach us, comfort us, and guide us to a place of hope and trust. Perhaps you've been criticized for showing emotions or felt the need to hide them to appear stronger. But what if your tears and your joy are tools God uses to refine your character? A sensitive heart is more attuned to hearing God's voice, discerning His guidance, and responding to others with compassion and empathy. Emotions also help us create deeper connections with those around us. When we share our pain and joy, we build bridges that reflect how God relates to us. This is expressed in Romans 12:15, which invites us to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Our emotions are not just about us. They have the power to impact lives around us. However, it's important to remember that while emotions are a vital part of our spirituality, they should not govern us. They are like a powerful river that needs boundaries to flow productively. These boundaries are built by faith in God, who helps us discern and balance our feelings. It is in Him that we find stability amidst emotional storms. As we understand the role of emotions in our spiritual lives, we realize that they draw us closer to God, to others, and to ourselves. They teach us to live authentically, to trust God, and to reflect His love in every area of our lives. In this process, we discover that emotional sensitivity is actually a gift that connects us to God's divine purpose. Emotional sensitivity is often seen as a weakness, but in God's eyes, it is a precious gift. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to feel the joys and sorrows of life so deeply? Those with a tender heart have a unique ability to reflect God's love to the world, showing empathy and compassion in ways few others can. C.S. Lewis wrote, "The pains of the human heart are the strings God plays to draw us back to His love." A sensitive heart, even one that sheds frequent tears, is a tool God uses to remind us of our humanity and draw us closer to His purpose. These tears are not signs of weakness. They are signs of a spirit attuned to spiritual realities and the needs of others. The Bible affirms this sensitivity. In Psalm 34:18, we read, "The Lord is close to the broken-hearted." This shows us that God not only acknowledges sensitivity, but honors it. He is near to those who feel deeply, because a broken heart is also a moldable heart, ready to respond to His divine guidance. Imagine your tears as seeds planted in fertile soil. Every tear shed in prayer, compassion, or joy is watered by God's love, blossoming into actions that bring comfort and hope to others. This gift of sensitivity makes us more aware of the needs around us, enabling us to be Christ's hands and feet in the world. Maybe you've tried to harden your heart to fit into a culture that values insensitivity, but God has called you to be different. He wants you to celebrate the sensitivity He has given you using it to glorify Him and impact those you encounter. The ability to feel deeply is a reflection of God's own heart, which is full of compassion and mercy. This emotional sensitivity is also an open door to intercession. Those who cry for others are often the ones who pray most fervently for them. In moments of prayer, tears can be the purest expression of surrender to God, a reminder that He sees, understands, and responds to both our needs and the needs of those we love. As you embrace your sensitivity, you realize that it is not a barrier, but an invitation to live a life more deeply connected to God and others. It is in this balance between feeling deeply and trusting fully in the Lord that we find our true purpose and learn to use this gift to glorify God and bring transformation to the world around us. Feeling deeply is a gift, but when emotions govern us, they can become a burden. Have you ever found yourself overwhelmed by intense feelings, searching for a sense of balance? God created us with emotions so we could connect with Him and with others, but He also calls us to anchor those emotions in His presence, allowing Him to be our foundation amidst the storms of the heart. C.S. Lewis observed, "Faith, even when it is clouded by our feelings, is still an act of will." This reminds us that while our emotions are valid, they should not dictate our decisions or shape our view of God. Instead, we are called to trust in Him, even when our emotions challenge us, knowing that His truth remains unshaken, regardless of how we feel in the moment. Proverbs 3, 5, 6 provides a clear foundation for managing our emotions. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. This means that even when our emotions feel contradictory or confusing, we can rest in the assurance that God is in control and will guide us in the right direction. Perhaps you're going through a time when your emotions feel overwhelming, a sadness, a doubt, or even a joy so intense that it's hard to comprehend. God doesn't ask you to ignore those emotions, but to bring them to Him. When we choose to trust God above what we feel, we experience the peace that surpasses all understanding and are reminded that He is with us in every circumstance. This balance between emotion and trusting God helps us live with purpose. Rather than being dominated by our feelings, we learn to use them as tools to connect more deeply with God and others. A heart broken by suffering can become a channel of compassion, while a heart filled with joy can inspire hope in those around us. In finding this balance, we discover that our emotions, no matter how intense, are never greater than God's power. They do not define who we are, God does. And as we trust in Him, we are empowered to navigate our emotions with wisdom and faith, allowing them to work for us rather than against us. This journey of balance equips us to use our emotions as a means of glorifying God. It's not about denying what we feel, but recognizing that in all things, our ultimate trust is in the Lord. By doing so, we uncover the true purpose of the tears and intense feelings He has given us, tools for spiritual transformation and testimonies of His care in our lives. Tears, often seen as a sign of weakness, carry a profound purpose in the Christian life. Have you ever considered how your tears might be used by God for something greater? Each tear shed in prayer, pain, or compassion is an expression of a broken heart that God values. They are a reminder that even in our fragile humanity, there is a path to glorify the Creator through what we feel. C.S. Lewis said, "Pain insists on being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world." Similarly, our tears often awaken us to the reality of God, reminding us that He is at work, even in our moments of greatest vulnerability. They become a channel through which we experience His grace and share His compassion with others. The Bible teaches that tears can be transformed into powerful actions. In Romans 12:15, Paul writes, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn." This calling not only acknowledges the value of sensitivity, but reminds us that tears can be a tool for spiritual connection and intercession. When we weep with someone, we participate in divine care, reflecting God's love. Tears also lead us to prayer, where we find comfort and direction. Think of Hannah, who wept before God over her inability to have children, 1 Samuel 1:10-11. Her tears were not ignored, but used by God for a greater purpose, resulting in the birth of Samuel, one of Israel's greatest prophets. Just like Hannah, our tears before God are heard and used to fulfill His plans in our lives. Furthermore, tears teach us about the beauty of serving others. When we allow our emotions to move us to action, we transform compassion into service. This could mean comforting someone in pain, praying for those in need, or performing acts of love. Our tears then become seeds of hope planted in the soil of faith. Perhaps you've underestimated the value of your tears, or seen them as something useless, but God doesn't waste a single one. In Psalm 56:8, we read, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." This assures us that God sees and treasures each tear, transforming them into something that brings glory to His name. By understanding the purpose of tears, we realize that they are not signs of defeat, but expressions of God's presence in our lives. They connect us to Him, to others, and to the call to live a life of service, compassion, and trust. It is in this recognition that we discover how even our sensitivity can be used to glorify God in profound and impactful ways. We live in a culture that often despises sensitivity and glorifies emotional toughness. Modern society teaches us that crying is a sign of weakness and that vulnerability makes us less capable. But have you stopped to consider what we lose when we distance ourselves from compassion and empathy? This emotional hardness can disconnect us from God's love and from the needs of those He calls us to serve. C.S. Lewis warned of the danger of hardening our hearts in his work, The Four Loves. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Protect your heart from pain, and you ensure it will never truly love. When we reject emotions, we deprive ourselves of the depth God designed for life. A hardened heart may seem strong, but it cannot reflect the love and compassion of Christ, which are central to our spiritual walk. The Bible reminds us that God values a sensitive heart. In Ezekiel 36:26, He promises, "I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." This heart of flesh, sensitive to God's voice and the needs of others, is what makes us instruments of His love in a broken world. In our pursuit of appearing strong, we risk becoming desensitized to the pain of others. This insensitivity prevents us from fulfilling the call of Romans 12:15. Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. Without a compassionate heart, we lose the ability to truly connect with those God places in our path. Emotional hardness not only separates us from people, but also distances us from God's divine plan. Perhaps you felt the pressure to appear strong, or hide your emotions to fit the world's expectations. But what if true strength lies in allowing God to use your sensitivity to impact others? Being vulnerable before God and others is an act of courage that reflects the character of Christ, who felt deeply and was unashamed to express his emotions. This modern insensitivity also robs us of the opportunity to glorify God through empathy and service. When we harden our hearts, we become blind to the needs of others and deaf to God's voice. Insensitivity deprives us of living out the purpose we were created for, to love God and our neighbor with all our being, including our emotions. By recognizing the dangers of emotional hardness, we are invited to return to the example of Christ, who showed us that feeling deeply is part of God's design. Our emotions are tools to glorify God, connect with others, and live lives of compassion and purpose. It is in this place of sensitivity that we find true strength in God. Tears often carry meanings far deeper than what appears on the surface. But how do you see your own tears? Do you view them as weakness or as an expression of something greater, a gift from God that connects you to what truly matters? Reflections like these invite us to examine the role sensitivity has played in our lives and rediscover how it can glorify God. C.S. Lewis challenges us with a similar introspection when he says, "The pain we feel now is part of the happiness to come. They are inseparable." This reminds us that even in our tears, God is at work within us, shaping us into his image. He transforms moments of sorrow and sensitivity into opportunities for spiritual growth, using them to align us with his purpose. The Bible echoes this truth in Psalm 56. 8. You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. Are they not recorded in your book? This verse shows us that God not only sees our tears, but treasures them as precious gifts. He uses them to remind us of his nearness and how they can be expressions of faith, prayer, and surrender to him. Perhaps you felt uncomfortable with your sensitivity or tried to hide it in a world that values emotional toughness. But God does not see it as a flaw. On the contrary, he uses it to connect you with his heart and with the needs of those around you. Your tears are a reminder that you are called to be different, to feel deeply, and to use that sensitivity to glorify God. Ask yourself, how am I using my sensitivity to impact the world around me? In Romans 12:15, we are invited to weep with those who weep and to share in the pain of others with empathy. This reflection helps us realize that our tears have a purpose, that we can use them to intercede, comfort, and bring hope to those around us. It's also important to ask, have I valued my emotions as tools God uses to shape my character? Finding that balance between feeling deeply and trusting fully in God helps us transform our tears into spiritual strength, a living testimony that, even in weakness, we are strong in Christ. As we reflect on our own tears, we are called to experience them with purpose and intentionality. They are more than emotional expressions. They are a channel of connection with God and the world around us. By embracing our sensitivity, we discover how each tear shed can glorify the Creator and lead us to a life of greater empathy, compassion, and spiritual impact. The tears we shed on our journey are not insignificant. They are expressions of our connection to God and the purpose he has for our lives. Every tear is a reminder that we are sensitive because we reflect the heart of God, a heart full of compassion, love, and hope. It is through this sensitivity that he shapes us, draws us closer to others, and uses us to bring his light to the world. C.S. Lewis wrote, "God shapes us through our pain, but he never abandons us in it." Perhaps you've questioned the reason behind your tears, or felt ashamed of your sensitivity, but remember, your tears are not wasted. They are instruments God uses to refine your faith and expand your capacity to love. Ask yourself, how can I use my sensitivity to glorify God and serve others? God doesn't waste a single moment of pain or emotion you experience. He transforms every tear into strength, compassion, and purpose. Declare boldly, "My tears belong to God, and through them He is working in me." Share this message with those who need comfort and subscribe to the channel to continue receiving words of wisdom and encouragement. In the comments, write, "My tears have a purpose in God," as a declaration of your trust in His divine love.